Hello and welcome. Today's project is all about mindfulness and the ego, how they relate to each other, because you can't have one without the other. Mindfulness, being in the present moment, accepting your situation, accepting your inadequacies. This breaks down the walls of your ego, because the ego is your identification with who you are, being in your conservative bubble. And when you're in that conservative bubble, you're overly judgmental, you're separating yourself from other people, you're so identified with what is familiar. And well, if anxiety, pain, and suffering is what's familiar to you, then you have no choice but to break out of that bubble. And mindfulness is so powerful that way. I mean, mindfulness, it helps us to let go of the control we unconsciously place on ourselves. Anxiety sufferers love to gain control. They're adding fuel to the fire because they're trying to, get some control over all of these symptoms and these sensations and their mindset and the confusion, the bewilderment, all of that. It just gets too much because anxiety sufferers are trying to grab onto everything that's beyond them, right? And this adds a lot of fuel. So when you let go and you accept your situation and you bring yourself into the moment and you kind of shine some truth onto your inadequacies, well, man, that goes a long way. That opens the doors to your potential. And so that's what I want to get into today. And when you're mindful, when you're in a meditation, when you let things go and you open the doors to your unconscious mind, what happens is all of the distress and traumas and unresolved problems of your past, it starts to bubble up to the surface. And when it bubbles up to the surface, well, what do we do most of our lives, right? We use so much emotional energy to repress them and ignore them. We use external things like movies and weed, alcohol, and toxic relationships, sex, all these addictions to, well, not confront these repressed problems, right? But when you're mindful and you're in a meditation, they start to come up, man, and you have to confront them and sort them out and accept them and let them go in order to get past that into this new enlightened, courageous state, right? You're not going to be a fully realized individual until you move past the stuff of your past that has been built up in these storage lockers within your unconscious mind, right? And we see in The Lion King, this is so cool because Simba is guided to this pool of water by Rafiki. Now, Rafiki resembles the voice of conscience, the shaman, right? And he shows up when Simba looks up to the heavens, looks up to the stars, and he asks for guidance. And then Rafiki just appears, right? And that's so cool, man. And that's exactly what happens when you start to ask for help and you start to shift your perspective. Your orientation changes. You start to look outside of the blinders that you've put on yourself. And so Rafiki guides Simba towards this pool of water. And Simba, Rafiki asks him, well, what do you see? Look into the water. And he sees his own reflection. That's the person he is now, right? But then this is what's cool. Rafiki says, okay, look deeper. And then Simba looks past his reflection and he sees his potential self. The reflection changes and it turns into like his father, but it's not his father, it's his older self, it's his potential, the spirit of his father, his unrealized potential, the spirit that is hidden away within him, the person he could become. Now, water always resembles the unconscious mind because water, you fish for what's in the depths of the water, right? You can bring about the things that are hidden away, the stuff that you ignored from your past or you repressed or you don't want to deal with. So in this scene, we see that Simba realizes that there is more to him than he is now, that he could become somebody, he could be more. And we cannot get into the water until we see past our damn reflection. That's it. We can't get into the water until we move past the ego. We can't change our situation until we move past our ego, who we think we are. Now, mindfulness, it tears down the walls of the ego, right? And the ego, for Simba, the ego was this silly, hedonistic boy living on Pleasure Island with Timon and Pumbaa. And, I remember that person, that Brad. I remember that Brad who was rebellious, who was overly judgmental, who lived in this conservative bubble. I shook my fist and I pointed my finger at people who were changing, who were well-disciplined, who were successful. And I was like, look at those people. I don't want that life. Screw them. And I go back to all of my addictions and all of my hedonistic pursuits. And I only increased my anxiety by doing that. I only increased the chaos. And at the same time was passing me by and I was staying in the same position and getting more anxious and more bitter and resentful because I wasn't breaking outside of that bubble. And outside of that bubble is where you're going to find the answers to your enlightened, courageous self, your potential, right? And for me, it was when I reached rock bottom with anxiety, with agoraphobia. That's when I decided to break free, right? My body was telling me you can't continue to live this way. You have to do something about it. All of the external crutches you were relying on, they are not working. They're not working. You're not getting the results you're looking for. So I had to break outside of that and I had to confront my ego and I had to tear down those walls of the ego. Now I want to read you something from one of my favorite books of all time, Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth. I highly recommend this book. I've read this book a few times and I continue to read it because, this book, it opened my mind to a different reality. So Eckhart Tolle says here, most people are so completely identified with the voice in the head, the incessant stream of involuntary and compulsive thinking and the emotions that accompany it, that we may describe them as being possessed by their mind. As long as you are completely unaware of this, you take the thinker to be who you are. This is the egoic mind. We call it egoic because there is a sense of self, I, ego, in every thought, every memory, every interpretation, opinion, viewpoint, reaction, emotion. This is unconsciousness, spiritually speaking. Your thinking, the content of your mind is of course conditioned by the past, your upbringing, culture, family background, and so on. So here's the thing. You have to go against the grain of not only your thinking and your behaviors, right? That's what I thought. Like I decided, okay, in order to change my anxiety and my suffering and my pain, I want to do the opposite of what I've been doing. So if I go and hang out with toxic friends, you know what? Screw that. I'm gonna sacrifice that, and then I'm gonna go spend some time and read. I'm gonna spend some time going out in nature. I'm gonna spend some time meditating, and just that quality time brought about all of the things, the traumas and my inadequacies, and that, you know, because of that, I had to contend with them and resolve them one at a time. So not only you go against the grain of your programming, but also what you've been taught, right? The super ego, the voice of culture, the voice of your family, the voice of the voice of society, right? Going against that. You know, people tell you, you know, go, well, not, they don't tell you, but this society, what it's doing is it's promoting social media. It's promoting junk food. It's promoting consumerism, materialism. And, well, if you continue to go with that grain, then you're just going to become this unconscious, automated, zombie-like creature who's unhappy, who's feeling unsatisfied. But so you go against the grain of the superego, you start to walk down interesting pathways, and you start to discover a new enriched life by meditating, by sacrificing junk food and hedonistic pursuits. And you just seem like you don't have to rely on all of these external things to be happy and at peace. And that's where I'm going to leave you on today's video. Please leave your comments below. I want to hear your story. Do you agree with this? Do you disagree with any of it? Let me know. And lastly, rise above anxiety. I will see you on the next video. Bye for now. Make sure to leave your comments below. Subscribe so that you'll be the first to know whenever I release a new video. And rise above anxiety. I'll see you next time.